analysis of the North Korean defector in public discourse, comparison of South Korean newspaper and Western media. Quite long, but I'm sure that our speaker will do justice to that today. And the name suggests the title. I won't go into reading all this. I think I shared that in the advert. So some people already have an idea of what they will be expecting in this talk. And because we're also running behind time, we will allow our speaker to also introduce herself. But she is a professor of Korean in the Department of Asian and Asian Languages and Cultures at Wesley College, US, and has a doctoral degree in linguistic department of Ohio State University and Korean language and literature department of Yonsei University, and been working in the field of corpus linguistics for a while now. Okay, so without wasting more time, I would suggest you share your screen now and start the talk. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry for the whole technological issues. So, and it always happens unexpectedly, but I'm so glad that I can make this presentation. Over the past 6 months, I was visiting researcher at Lancaster University and had a great time interacting with the colleagues and the graduate students, and then learn more about discourse analysis and critical discourse analysis. And so this study is not actually accomplished work, and it's actually, we are starting this project. So the project is doing in collaboration with the Dr. Pomil Kang at Yonsei University. And so our study got inspired by many other corpus linguists at Lancaster. So, and the topic includes the North Korea, of course. So you may not remember this kind of exciting moment anymore because it seems like COVID just took our memory away. So, but 2018, and there seems to be more conversations and then sort of a peace talk. But throughout the COVID, the situation got very different. So and then there has been some of the dooming news about the North Korean struggle to escape. So only 67 North Koreans made it to the South last year, which is a very low number. But last week, there was also the news that 2 families just came to South, defected from North Korea using the sea. So still people are coming, but the whole situation, the physical situation was very challenging. And in the recently, there has been a news, very saddening news about that a girl and a North Korean defector mother, and they died during the COVID time, and they found the death in starvation. It's not in South Korea. It's not in North Korea, in South Korea. So they were living. So this was like 2019, but the news came out, but still like there are many challenges, and the life goes on in South Korea. So the screen shows that the movie portraying that one defector's life journey. And then the other movie on the right side is also the young North Korean defector selling goods in the market. So they are very grateful mostly. I've been meeting with the North Korean defectors and then NGO people, and then of course their life-threatening situation, they are out of it. So, however, still in the new economic political system in South Korea, and most of the North Korean defectors, I would abbreviate it as NKDs, and they are really juggling to, just getting adjusted to new life. And And interestingly, also through my visit at Lancaster, I learned also there are actually quite small, significant community in New Malden in London. And there are about that 800, they estimate the number is between the 800 and 1,000. And then people are people from South, but also people from North Korea, about 800 North Korean defectors living, settling down in the third country, not South Korea. So it is interesting to see how their life and their identity and diaspora works all over the world. And then the background-wise, we need more, because this topic itself is very political, because the North Korea is included. So, but it also there has been some significant research from politics and also sociology and anthropology, really examining the issues of North Korean defectors. So this is the number, the overall through the between 1980s and then up to 2023. So you can see that the number is really going down through since 2020, but things are quite unpredictable in from now also. Sorry. And there are some of the, just scholarly work, I will talk about it soon, that I was inspired for this project, but also there has been some studies, Hosiniak 2011, it's quite 10 years ago, but pointing out that still like the various issues exist and then in South Korea. So and she analyzed them by interviewing some 109 defectors, and then they say mostly the life in South is quite challenging, but among many different things, like capitalism is new to them, and they don't have family members, and then Korean society, South Korean society, although the language-wise we can understand each other also, like but North Korean dialect has a certain intonation, so that intonation and then different, like dialectal usages are presenting some of the challenges for them. But also South Korean society, there are lots of English is used. If you don't know the English, actually, if you go out to the street, anybody who has been to Seoul, and they will realize that the English is actually really dominating the South Korean culture. So their linguistic life in South Korea is very challenging, and then language is the one North Korean defectors settling in South are always pointing out they are having some difficulties. However, this kind of phenomenon is also, it is important to recognize that there has been some changes, because the history of NKDs living in South Korea, it's getting longer and longer, and there are some generation gaps. So there has been a lot of changes among the young youth North Korean defectors, almost very fluent in Korean, but also in English. But also there are some mid-age North Korean defectors still juggling with not only their own accent and then language, but also learning English. So language is becoming main issues. So so this study is based on the Corpus-based critical discourse analysis. All of you will be familiar with discourse analysis and media attitude. The project focusing on representation of Muslims in the British media. The project led by Paul Baker and Tony McNary and Gabriel Latos and at Lancaster. And the book 2013 and closely examined the languages in text and identified how ideologies and power relations are represented in the language. So our study has been inspired by this kind of a prior research. And they try to combine the linguistic analysis with the different social, cultural, and historical and political contexts. So well, my colleague and I were attracted to this topic because especially CDA is not against the power per se, but more concerned about the abuses of power. So by using the corpus-based technique, and then we try to identify where in language and this kind of abuses of power are created. So the goal of the study is quite, I explained, so we try to explore how South Korean media legitimate and or promote certain representation of the people, but also we try to compare the narratives in the South with the narratives of the Western media. So we try to show also compare it, and then by looking at the major broadsheet news in the South and US and UK. So this is the pilot study. So as I mentioned that we started to get a better idea to move on to the next level, and I will explain further. And so methodology-wise, we try to combine the corpus-based analysis using the basic corpus tools like a keyword analysis and the frequency, and also and some part of that the lexical usage analysis, and also try to combine it later also critical discourse analysis. And we try to provide a quantitative and qualitative based analysis. So then focusing on how language is used to substantiate the stereotypes and bias, and also some of the challenges in the political discourse of the defectors, and by focusing on public discourse. So the corpus data, and we first collected the broadsheet newspapers published in Korean in South Korea. So we collected articles published in 5 major newspapers between 1990s and then December 2022, and created a corpus. And for Western media also, since it's a pilot study, we were not quite ambitious, so we used the Nexus Uni and extracted some of the newspaper articles from the Guardian, representative newspapers in the UK, and also the New York Times. And by using the same keywords, North Korea and defectors, for Korean language, and then defectors, actually the term itself is quite controversial, because so we use that 탈북, which means like escaping from the north. But 탈북 is Korean is also agglutinative language. So morphological combination is much more complex and productive. So as you may recognize, also 탈북, escaping from the north, can combine with the morpheme 다, meaning person. So 탈북자, NK defectors, but NK defectors, they themselves don't like the word. And so the government tried to accommodate by inventing the new word, 세터민, like new terms that literally meaning like a new resident, or the literally people new place resident. Or people try to use the longer term like resident escaped from the north, which is longer, but none of them are quite satisfactory. So in the media, still 탈북자, like NKD, and or 탈북민, meaning like NK defector citizens. Those words are commonly used. And by using the Korean newspapers, we extracted 6.8 million 어절 corpus, which is pretty big. And so, and then we divided the Korean newspapers into 2, depending on their political kind of political atmosphere they create, and we divide them between the conservatives and then progressives. So conservatives include the three major newspapers, including 조선일보, 중앙일보, and 동아일보, and progressive includes that more the progressive newspapers, and they are more into the minority issues, and then progressive side is more interested in the economic equality and also diversity. And conservative is also focusing more on the national interest and then freedom, and so there are quite clear political differences in their perspectives. So articles we collected from the 5 major newspapers, and then every year, like the number of the articles are different. So you can see starting from 1990s at the beginning. Interesting part is actually this is the time that North Korea was in a big trouble with starvation, and then that was the hardest time. They then Western media actually quite surprised surprised at the terrible situation there, so they highlighted. And then from then, and then there has been more and more North Korean defectors. The number got increased, so there are more newspaper articles came. And one thing actually I skipped is that the population is quite, just ups and down through the more than 3 decades. But now population is majority, like 70 above the 70% are female North Korean defectors, and also there are the region-wise and the more northern people living in North Korea. It's easier for them to escape. So then Hamgyongdo is the area that mainly NK defectors are from. But also it depends, and then inside the population, their economic class is different, and so there are some high-ranked people living in Pyongyang, and then never went through the starvation, and they didn't even realize it in 1990s. And so there are people, for high officials, and then pianists, and those people coming from the north to the south also. And so it's important to realize that. NK defector news corpus is like it's about it includes that 6.8 million words in Korean. So but you can see there are some just imbalance the number in terms of articles. So just looking at that the article numbers, and you can see that 조선일보, which is the major conservative newspapers, published so far between the same time, it's over 8,000 articles. However, progressive papers represented by Hangyeore and Gyeongyang, and then if you combine it and the number, they are much lower. So of course it depends on that, the size of the newspapers and articles. But in terms of the North Korean defector issues, mostly progressive side is interested in minority, and NK defectors are clearly minority. However, surprisingly, because that progressive party is also more interested in the peace talk and then compromise between the South and the North. So they try to make that North Korean government to communicate with them. So the NK defectors are not quite, and they talk about them, but there has been some of the interesting imbalance on this topic, which is quite clear in terms of the number of the articles published. Then by using that article, the corpus we created, we used that since we are using Korean, and we had to, just to use some of the tools, part of speech tagger separately, and then use that Python programming to extract the relevant information. So one thing we did was that 100 topic content, the high frequency nominals, and then try to see when we look at the content words and especially nominals, if there are some of the clues, we can really start our research. And then we divided that, we extracted some of the topic nominals, looking at the content words in the corpus, and then because the data is so big, and we selected 100 top nominals and look at them. So these are all the list. Since you don't know the Korean, so I'm not going to spend more time on this. But we divided it, all these extracted 100 content nominals into some categories. So hopefully this chart is easier for you to understand. So after extracting 100, and we divided that, we categorized them into several smaller categories. So many of the vocabulary are politics, governance, and organizations. And then, so there are many words you can see, like Kim, the dear leader Kim and Kim Jong-un, those are political figures' names, and also departments or United Nations. So, and then also there are some country names, and then, and as we expected, also there are some words on focusing on human rights, because NK defectors go through the hardship, and then their human rights, just a violation is a serious topic. So you can see that human rights, policy, coercion, freedom, those things appear, but also economy related words like support, economy, and money. But compared to other kind of categories, the laws and rights and crime versus also the economy is quite small set compared to other vocabulary related to politics. And then also we try to look at, because we're not really focusing on North Korea, we are looking at the North Korean defectors portrayed in the media, when we also look at the words like related to society and community. And there are words like, the various words, and we will talk about it a little later. And we extracted some of the pronouns. Pronouns are quite interesting to look at, because as we expected, Korea is also, the collectivism is a very, it's a visible. So the culture-wise, so the we is a very important pronoun. So we identify that pronoun we appears in the has a high frequent noun, and also there are other some of the content words we explored, like and then if we have some summarized notable points and more focus on politics rather than laws and community or human rights, and then some of the notable content to nominals of high frequency, as I mentioned, they appear, but it is not quite. Of course, we shouldn't make a generalization without looking at the concordance and then re-examining how these words are used. So, but it is important to recognize that these words pop up. And also linguistic context needs to be examined, so determine the accurate function of these topic words. So we did, as I said, this is the sort of the pilot study. And then we also look at the collocation as a, there's a collocation of the type, which is the common word, very major word, keyword to extract the corpus, and check how the collocation shows that kind of signifies that the context, the real world context. And then collocation of a Thai book had like about 60, but just in terms of the number, the MI score is very low when we did it. So maybe we should have done it with a log likelihood, but even with the lower MI score, with the lower MI scores, then those the words extracted are quite interesting for us. So we categorize them into some different categories. So first one is the word groups representing individuals and groups. And it shows that some of the major vocabulary like formulate, 동지, which is actually communist usage. And 동지 is a quite sort of a dying word in the South Korea, or taboo word in strict sense, because 동지 reminds of that, communism. So South Koreans are not using it, but in the context, there are the NKD context, and then it's actually the top major word, and broker. And also a lot of missionaries are involved in the, they help North Korean defectors escape. So, and then some of the groups like youth and then refugee, and it's also the very family-oriented culture, and people escape, and then families come. So then family and organization, and there are words like, and in 13, and 공안 is actually the public security officer in China. So a lot of people escape through the China. So it shows also that, just the escape route also they are going through. And more interesting words is the process, actually. It signifies the process of escape. So, and disguise and repatriation to NK, and also internment and coercion. So a lot of North Korean defectors come and then they do testimony. So these are all the words we've been expecting. But also you can see that the word like wall is quite uh, frequently comes with the talbook. And then, as in other, just other studies on refugees, and it is also some of the words related to size and status, they are commonly appear. So parade, number, increase, massive amount, and those words are quite just as we expected. These are the very common word. But also, interestingly, if you see under the table, number one is the status and position. So um, Korean society, or every society, there is the economic status and social political status. But as I mentioned, that those NKDs have a very different socio-economic status from North Korea. And interestingly, that kind of status differences continue even after they escape from the North Korea. Then there are some of the concerning vocabulary we found also, like human trafficking, and it reflects that while they escaped, and the human trafficking issue is significant, and also a lot of a personal situation. The 처지 is also a very negative word, and then also livelihood support, and then some sort of the countermeasures and employment, and these are all suggesting significant social legal issues. So from the list, we summarize that newspapers focus on reporting the process, right? And in South Korea seems to be frequently addressed based on the words coming like employment, settlement, and money. However, empirical issues in daily life in South Korea it seems to be less focused, because we recognized also education, and which is a quite primary concern, and not even welfare are listed as a top collocate. And also different issues needs to be explored for different subgroups. And so there are youth group issues, and then also there is a word like referring to college students, and also females versus males. But one aspect we noticed is that it is quite clear that negative discourse prosody of a collocates quite visible. So next one is the keyword analysis. I know that I don't have much time, so I'm gonna just go fast. But keywords, so we compare that conservative media versus progressive media in South Korea. So these are the list. So 50 keywords from the conservative newspapers. I highlighted some of the signifying words like a lot of political figures' name, and also talking about international, like country names like the U.S. and then Korea-U.S. relation, and also political party in the North Korea, and also unification. And some of the names are popping up they are quite well-known figures in among the North Korean defectors, but there are and also some of the political leaders' name, and then of course the words like a missile and then drug and also nuclear, and these are the quite the high keyword, the keywords in the conservative newspapers. And in the progressive part, and then they talk about, but also they say some of the words like fabrication and then migrant discrimination. So it seems like they are more focusing on the discrimination side, but also there has been some quite interesting keywords like spying, and there are unfortunate cases. Some NKDs got caught as a spy, and then so they highlight that aspect, and then so it's quite connected to their human rights. We can interpret, but also it shows that some sort of the political different political perspectives. So the progressive side is really focusing on some. Uh, they try to connect the North Korean defector issue with the labor issues in South Korea, which is quite understandable. But also they highlight that some of that national security also, like emphasizing it, so and restricting individuals' freedom. And also they highlight that conservative parties' propaganda also mention. We can see it from that figure named Park Geun-hye, which the former president who got indicted, and so and also they use the neoliberalism as a critical word also. So based on that, let me quickly summarize it. So keyword analysis suggests that conservatives and progressives have somewhat different perspectives. And then conservatives are more actively addressing issues of the North Korean defectors from the political perspective or in domestic level and international level. But also it is quite obvious that strong negative attitude against the North Korea is quite highlighted. But progressive highlight more issues related to domestic politics and then social cultural aspect of individuals and groups. And then more discussions are actually putting on highlighting the connecting NKDs with South Korea's minorities, and also there is a sort of it's not the right word to use, but a little bit of a defensive attitude against the critique on the pro-North Korean government atmosphere. So this topic, this part should be more carefully examined, and then we need more evidence for that. And political stance and attitude of the newspapers are reflected in this keyword list. So now, and I will report that quickly, the Western media. So our Western media is quite different, but it's not quite different, but this is the articles published in Western media. So, and if you remember, these are the articles. So of course, the South Korea, there are more articles focusing on North Korean defectors. However, it's interesting that there are more and more. And then the top one is the NY Times, and then between 1916 and 2019, 2016, there has been a spike. So, and we have to identify, or we have to figure out why. But there has been very barely, not much, the article, not many articles were published up to 2008 in the Guardian, but the number is increasing gradually. And then we did the 100 topic word analysis. So, and you can see they're similar. We used the same categories of 10 and then identified, but this table is quite similar. So the more, the one we've seen in the South Korean media. So there are more discussions on the politics, governance, and organization, but not much about the laws and rights, except there are the human right is an important word, but also economy is not quite mentioned. And there are people talking about covering the North Korean individual life. So we still see these family men or also father, health, and these words are coming. But rather than we, there are various pronouns because of the linguistic difference. And in Korean language, and pronouns are less used. So except the word like 우리, we, but in Western media there are lots of and it is quite interesting. Of course, then not interesting, but they is a very highly frequent word. And and then there are other samples of the words. And then this is actually the keywords comparing Guardian versus NY Times. So it's very similar, the international relations, country's name, but it's quite interesting to see the connection between the North Korea and also Syria and Qatar and other parts. And also there are some of the words, and we noticed that Trump, because of the peace, the peace talk, and then Trump is quite, just a significant name, and then even Donald is a high frequency word. So, and then in the New York Times, and then they are very focusing on United States and American, and also nuclear and weapon and nuclear issues. They are highly, just emphasized. And also in Guardian, demilitarize, and then denuclearization is the the keywords also. So, and then for simply the collocates defectors, and as you can see, and then Guardian collocates of the defector is the North and then groups. But I thought like it's interesting to see these words like high ranking, highest ranking, prominent NKDs, and even beauties. And we need to look at that exact context. But there are some attitude that focus on the more highly ranked officials escaped from North Korea. Or their beauties, I think I look at the data, and then they were talking about the young. There is the reality show and inviting young, young female defectors, and there's been quite some discussion about it. So that's why. And then those words, them showing, and but also as we see in South Korean media, there are some of the vocabulary like raping, traitor, and negative, with negative semantic prosody. So summary is like this. So if I summarize diachronically, the conservative newspapers have presented more articles than the progressive newspapers, but it doesn't mean that they are more interested in individual NKDs. And conservative newspaper display more positive. Oh, sorry about that. There is a typo. So progressive newspapers in South Korea display more positive attitudes. Oh, sorry, no, it's right. Toward the NKDs, but the progressive side is more positive showing positive attitude toward the North Korean government. So there has been some, attitude differences, and we need to explore this more. And Western media continuously address issue of this issue, but they focus on political and diplomatic relation. So NKD's individual life and then their settlement in Korea, they are not quite interested. And also linguistic analysis of a topic and collocation indicates that newspaper narratives are focusing on also political and issues rather than socio-economic and cultural aspect. And keyword analysis of SK, South Korea, and also it suggests that conservative and progressive have a somewhat different focus regarding on North Korean defectors, and Western newspapers are more, highlighting international issues. And in both, negative discourse prosody can be quite, tangible and visible. So the corpus-based approach offers for this issue more empirical linguistic evidence, so that it enables the exploration of NKD discourse. And it is also highlighting the potential misuse of the language, so that it can contribute and it can trigger the enhancing the discrimination in the society. So further issues, and this is the last part, sorry for getting long, but we need, based on this, the groundwork, now we need to do more micro level contextual analysis. So, and we need to use the extracted linguistic features based on the topics and collocates and keywords. And we have to actually look at the actual usage in the context. So the problem is, like, there are so many data, like examples to look at, and how to do it efficiently and effectively. That's the researchers, their duty, but also how to minimize our own bias based on it. And so, and Paul Baker recommended actually this topic for this research, researchers' reflectivity awareness is really demanded, and also thorough reading is always. So for future direction, so based on this, we would like to do the further study and on media, but also there are new North Korean defectors started to publish their own narratives by using the YouTube, and also their own newspapers, online newspapers. So we are trying to collect them, but also we need to collect the individual narratives also by interviewing North Korean defectors and compare that how personal level narratives are connected or also disconnected to the public discourse narratives. Sorry, but this is that. And let me go back, and then I will. How can I? Okay, so thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know if you can see the chat. A few questions are there. If you can't, I can read them out. Or if those who has asked the question want to also voice them out, that would be nice. Can you see the chat?
Yeah. So
Good.
Yejin says, like, just leaving a quick question. So the difference between the content words and topic nominals. Content words are actually, I should have explained it. It's more like standard terms for focusing on the content morpheme, like verbs and the nouns and adjectives, excluding more grammatical words. And then topic nominals are only selected out of that content words, and we focused on the nominals, but not all nominals, because there are some grammatical, the bound nouns functioning some grammar for the grammar, so we excluded them. So, and I know the topic may not, it can be confusing, so we may need to invent the new word for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So there's another question there by myself. I was basically looking at the extraction techniques. I don't know exactly, or maybe I missed it when you said it, what's going on in the background. But I know that keeping the search on specific words may not always extract the content you want. Is there any kind of semantic layer on top of your search, or are you using, that will help you extract relevant documents or articles that do not specifically refer to those words or mention those words that you have in your keyword?
Yeah, it's a good question. So once you are starting with the foreign language, non-English data, and this is not that easy. So I wish, when I checked that the English newspapers, I thought, like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. But for Korean, so we had to use that morpheme analyzer because the morphological combination is so, strong and powerful. So even the defector itself is a complex morpheme, including that deflect, right? Like, so, and then it generates other words. And actually, though, using the keywords to build up the corpus, it's not a big issue. So you can combine them together. But the issue comes when we measure collocation.
Yeah.
So I admit that the collocate data I presented, it's very sketchy. So we need to really, because whether we have to decide that we're going to use that morpheme boundary as a kind of a word boundary, which doesn't make that sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I thought as much. I think you did highlight that in one of your in the last slide. But I asked the question while you were still talking, so I don't forget. All right.
Yes.
So
this Paul, is the So that's the important issue we have to solve. But at least even very very naive approach, and then we gathered some of the linguistic clues, so that we can explore more.
Yeah.
So that's the positive sign.
That's true. Yeah, it's an iterative process. Yeah. All right. Paul has a question. I don't know if you want to now.
Thanks, Sonny, for the great talk. It was really interesting. I mean, I don't know Korean, so this might be a very silly question, but methodological question, kind of picking up what you just said about the morphemes and so on. So do you, when you're using keywords or collocation methods, is it better to apply it to the word form or to the lemma, the stem? I mean, presumably if it's very many affixes and suffixes and so on, then if you use the word form, the frequency will be spread across multiple forms, so there might be less useful as techniques.
Right. So, Paul, this is a very important aspect of it. It's not naive question at all. So, but we rely on first the morpheme analyzer. So, and then you need the lemmatization, because otherwise, especially the verb inflection is like there are 100 different forms for one verb. So it doesn't make sense. But we use that. The stem or the root form for the verb, but that part is quite tricky. But because we look at the more content word usage, so when we that actually gives us the better result. Actually, even though our methodology is very sort of sketchy, but we're not interested in exploring or parsing. But we are really targeting the content root and the root. So that's why. But we try to really, Dr. Kang and I, particularly he's the programmer, I'm more the theory side person. So, but we just, I think we need to test other things so that check if we are extracting the right information, really.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we have another question from Scarlett. Scarlett, do you want to ask the question, or could I ask on your behalf? But I think it's quite straightforward. It's could I ask which corpus software is used and which reference corpus is applied?
So the Corpus software probably, and Scarlett is asking for Korean, not for, because for English data, I use the Entcong, so that was quite, and then we use that for English newspapers, that, Guardian versus the NY Times and vice versa. But for Korean, and we did the Python. So everything we did actually behind the scene. It's the Python, and then I talked about briefly like a morpheme analyzer, which claims that 98% accuracy, but when we extracted the data, still like there are errors, significant. It's bigger. However, and that's quite good enough for us to focus on our own topic.
Fantastic. Are there more questions? Scarlett is coming back to say maybe another question or thank you. All right, thank you. All right. Okay. Wanhao, you have a question? Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So
Yep.
yeah, very interesting talk. I'm quite enjoying that. And yeah, so although I'm not from linguistic, I'm also doing some research about the cross-cultural comparison between the differences like from the news outlets in Western country and non-Western world. So yeah, I'm yeah from the psychological perspectives. So yeah, I do not have a exact question, but I would like to mention a little bit about. I remember you shared image about the trend across year and time. So you mentioned you were quite interested in why there is a peak in what that
2016 in the Western media.
Yeah, so that reminded me. Several weeks ago, I read a book that called "In Order to Live," something like that. So, a North Korean girl's journey to freedom. So that written by like the factor you mentioned, and probably I just checked the detailed information. Probably she published that book at that time, and you know the peak is from the New York Times, and I suppose probably the author she graduated from the Columbia University, and she lives in.
I remember that. Okay, so you know, looking at this topic, actually, looking at the linguistic feature is quite much simpler, even like because you have to figure out the political events and then social cultural events together. So that might be actually. So only thing that I can find out is that reading the whole collected articles. So we are about to start the journey. Yeah, but thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wanhao. Any other question or comment? All right, none is coming. So we have to all thank our presenters on here today for a very wonderful and engaging talk. I'm pleased to be able to make it. I think it's about 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. where you are now.
Not so bad today, but thank you for coming because I know it's not really the regular meeting time,
Yeah, it's
but
not the
I'm
regular
in
meeting
Seoul
time.
now.
Yes. Okay, but we really enjoyed that. Like I said, it's recorded and it will be on YouTube. So if for some reason you don't want any part of you, especially those who ask questions, sure, let me know so I know how to edit it. Yeah, are we going to have your slides available so I can attach it as
Oh
well?
yeah, I can
Or
share
any
it.
part of
Should
it?
I send
Okay.
it to you? Yeah.
Yeah, you can send it to me so
Yeah.
I can put it on our website as well. So thank you all for coming. And watch out our space for future talks. Thank you, Sangi.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Yep.